The little girl stood silently at the top of the grand staircase as another nanny rushed out of the mansion in tears, dragging her suitcase behind her without looking back. She was the 12th nanny to quit in less than a year. Every expensive expert, every child psychologist, and every highly recommended caretaker had failed. The billionaire single father watched from his office window with exhausted eyes, wondering if anyone would ever reach the lonely heart of the daughter he was slowly losing. But on that bright morning, someone completely unexpected arrived at the gates. She owned almost nothing except a worn backpack, a gentle smile, and a heart that refused to give up. Sometimes miracles don't wear expensive clothes, they arrive carrying hope. Before we continue this unforgettable story, please take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with your family and friends, and subscribe to TrueTaleTime if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible power of love to heal broken hearts. Billionaire technology entrepreneur Cedric Hawthorne had built one of the largest companies in the country through endless determination and sacrifice, but none of his success could protect him from the pain of losing his beloved wife, Marissa, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier. Since that heartbreaking day, his 8-year-old daughter, Eloan, had locked herself inside an invisible wall of silence. She rarely smiled, barely spoke, and refused to trust anyone who entered the enormous mansion. Every nanny hired with glowing recommendations eventually gave up after facing endless rejection. Some blamed the child. Others blamed the grieving father who buried himself in work. The magnificent estate was filled with priceless art, elegant gardens, sparkling fountains, and luxurious rooms, yet it felt colder than an empty house abandoned by time. Far away in a struggling neighborhood lived 22-year-old Mireya Santos. She had spent most of her life caring for younger children after losing both parents in a tragic bus accident during her teenage years. She worked part-time cleaning classrooms at a local school while studying child development through borrowed library books at night. Money was always scarce, but compassion had never been. Every challenge had taught her patience instead of bitterness. When she saw an advertisement seeking another nanny for the billionaire's daughter, people laughed at the idea of her applying. They reminded her that trained professionals had failed and that someone as poor as her stood no chance. But Mireya believed children did not need perfection. They needed someone willing to stay when everyone else walked away. On a clear sunny morning, she arrived at the mansion wearing neatly repaired clothes and carrying homemade sandwiches because she could not afford lunch in the wealthy part of the city. The security guards looked doubtful before finally allowing her inside. Cedric barely glanced at her simple resume. Compared to the polished application stacked across his desk, hers looked almost empty. Yet there was something calm in her eyes that made him hesitate. He offered her only 1 week, expecting another quick resignation. Mireya accepted with quiet confidence, not because she believed the job would be easy, but because she believed every hurting child deserved another chance. During her first meeting with Eloan, nothing happened. The little girl ignored her completely, refusing even to make eye contact. Previous nannies would have tried to force cheerful conversations or expensive activities. Mireya did something different. She simply sat nearby and began folding colorful paper into birds, flowers, and tiny boats. She hummed soft melodies while sunlight poured through the tall windows. She never demanded attention. She only filled the silent room with gentle warmth. Day after day she returned, even when ignored. Slowly, almost invisibly, Eloan began watching from the corner of her eye. One afternoon, Mireya noticed dusty gardening tools hidden behind the greenhouse. She discovered from an elderly groundskeeper that Marissa had loved growing wildflowers with her daughter before becoming sick. The garden had been abandoned ever since. Instead of buying expensive toys, Mireya spent her small savings on packets of flower seeds. She quietly planted them beneath the warm afternoon sun. The next morning, Eloan silently followed her outside for the first time. Neither spoke. They simply worked side by side, placing tiny seeds into fresh soil. It became their daily ritual. Weeks passed, and little green sprouts emerged from the earth just as hope slowly returned to the child's heart. Cedric began noticing impossible changes. The house that once echoed with silence now carried occasional laughter drifting through open windows. Eloane started eating full meals again. She drew colorful pictures instead of dark empty pages. She even greeted the staff with shy smiles. The billionaire could hardly believe what expensive specialists had failed to accomplish was happening through the simple patience of a poor young woman who never expected recognition. For the first time in years, he arrived home before sunset just to watch his daughter happily watering flowers beside Mireia beneath the bright blue sky. Then life tested everyone again. During a company crisis, false accusations against Cedric spread across the media, causing investors to panic. Reporters crowded outside the mansion. Fear and tension returned overnight. Cedric became consumed by meetings while the household fell into anxiety. Eloane sensed the stress and began withdrawing once more. But Mireia refused to let darkness erase the progress they had made. Every morning she reminded the little girl that storms always pass and that flowers bloom because they survive the rain. Together they continued caring for the garden despite cameras flashing beyond the gates. Their quiet routine became a symbol of resilience that even Cedric desperately needed. Eventually the investigation cleared Cedric completely. His reputation was restored, but something far more valuable had changed inside him. He realized he had spent years trying to solve every problem with money while overlooking the healing power of time, presence, and unconditional kindness. He thanked Mireia not with grand speeches but by creating a charitable foundation in his late wife's memory to provide education and childcare opportunities for struggling young caregivers like her. He also offered Mireia a permanent place in their family, not simply as an employee, but as someone whose compassion had transformed a broken home into one filled with life again. By the arrival of spring, the once empty garden had become a breathtaking sea of colorful flowers stretching across the estate. Visitors admired its beauty, never realizing every blossom represented a tiny moment of trust patiently earned between a lonely child and a young woman who had refused to quit. Eloane stood proudly beside the blooming paths with genuine happiness shining across her face, while Cedric finally understood that wealth could build houses, but only love could create a home. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and let us know your thoughts in the comments because your support helps TrueTaleTime bring more inspiring stories to people around the world. Special request: comment below with, "Kindness never quits," if you believe one caring person can completely change another person's life. As the sun set gently behind the blooming garden, Cedric watched his daughter laughing freely for the first time in years, and he realized that the greatest miracle had never been the fortune he built. It was the courage of one poor girl who chose patience instead of pride, compassion instead of comfort, and hope instead of surrender. Sometimes the people who possess the least material wealth carry the richest hearts, and those hearts have the extraordinary power to heal lives that money never could. That is why the impossible is often accomplished not by the strongest or the richest, but by the one person who simply refuses to give up on someone who has forgotten how to believe.